Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to this Decarbonization Business Charter webinar series, which we are calling as the Decarb December. Decarb December is a learning series on thought to action in decarbonization. So first, let me give you a brief introduction about this project. So this decarbonization business charter was conceived to establish a unified platform that brings together key stakeholders, fostering collaboration for the decarbonization of the building and construction sector. And this initiative is a collaborative effort between World Resource Institute India, Alliance for Energy Efficient Economy, Mahindra Lifespace Developer Limited, and Ecolab. This project aims to address shared challenges and opportunities. The charter provides a framework to identify and prioritize critical actions, steering efforts towards the common goal of reducing carbon emission in the sector. And as a particular, this webinar session is designed to provide practical insights and strategies for decarbonization of the building sector, paving the way for a more sustainable future. So without further delay, let's commence this session. So today we have Professor Namrata Damankar. She is a director of Sprout Greening Ideas, and she is also serving as an assistant professor in Dr. Bhanuben Nanavati College of Architecture. Today, Professor Damankar will be speaking on thermal comfort in affordable housing sector. So, Professor Damankar, now it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brijesh, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to AEEE and to Mahindra Life Spaces and all the collaborators for this wonderful webinar series that you all have planned for. And thank you for also inviting me to conduct this session. I'll just share my screen. Just let me know when it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Yes. Yes. So welcome all of you. I will be covering a short topic, but very relevant and important topic today, which is talking about thermal comfort in the affordable housing sector. Yes, just I think just to build up on some statistics and where we are globally today, we all know that with each passing day and with each passing year, we all are actually witnessing and experiencing warmer temperatures as years pass by, right? So what does this actually mean for the residential industry or for the construction industry per se, right? On one end, we have the climate stress that we are all undergoing day by day, but along with that, we are also facing a lot of housing demand, as well as also a shortfall in this housing demand, right? So how do we actually balance both these aspects of being climate responsive or trying to be relevant in today's times with these climate stresses, and also how do we actually meet the urban housing demand that we are seeing in a country like India. So also further, we all know that the residential sector in India is expected to rise in the next 10 to 15 years exponentially. But currently also at the same time, surveys were conducted which actually saw that there is a lot of housing shortage in the urban and rural areas of India. Government schemes like the PMAY, which is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, was actually one of the initiatives or the schemes which was launched with the with this particular aspect to actually reduce this housing shortage that was experienced. So with these policies, or many such other policies that the government has come up with, what we actually see is an opportunity to really evaluate, demonstrate and build housing that really focuses on providing not just thermal comfort, but at the same time also then minimizing the energy and resource efficiency, or resource uses in this entire construction industry. So if we start looking at this housing shortage, or now with the demand with these government schemes, uh, you will actually see that in the next 10 years we actually are going to have a huge stock of buildings which are actually going to sprawl all across our urban centers. So how can we actually use this as an opportunity to demonstrate not just thermal comfort but also resource efficiency? So that is something that we really need to think. Um, but at the same time, what has also happened is that due to this shortage of housing and the demand for more housing or residential housing, the adaptability is seen for, what has happened over the years is that because they want to scale up and provide and meet these demands for the housing, what we have actually seen is that there has been an adaptability of cheaper technologies and methods that can actually increase the pace of construction and reduce the cost, right? This has also led to a neglect of actually providing comfortable spaces for occupants, and also leading to use of technologies which are not relevant in the context of the climate change scenarios that we are facing. There is also no direct target focus on buildings which are future ready, because we all know that the buildings that are going to get built today are going to be there for the next 50 odd years, right? So how are we actually constructing these buildings today which are actually future ready? How are they actually going to be resilient towards the disasters or the calamities, natural calamities that we all are facing? One of them being typically the heat stress, which we again see primarily, and that because that has a direct relevance with today's topic of thermal comfort. And also again with the growing energy demand, how are we actually moving towards using of better material selection? How are we actually trying to enhance thermal comfort for occupants? So this is something that we really need to give a thought to. This is something that has become a real pain point or a challenge for the construction industry. At the same time, just to talk a little about how this particular project or how this particular topic of providing thermal comfort in the construction industry per se, I'm not very focused on the residential sector, but the construction industry in general. There are a lot of codes and standards, or again schemes, which actually show the relevance of national priorities. So for example, we have the Energy Conservation Building Code for the residential sector, or the Eco Niwas Samhita, which actually sets minimum building envelope performance standards, right? To limit heat gain, heat losses, and for also adequate natural ventilation along with daylight also. And also now further including also, how appliances and energy efficiency along with renewable energy can actually be brought holistically into this entire framework of the RECBC. So we have, like I said, along with that, the National Building Code was also set to sort of revise in 2016, which actually again further set again minimum standards for thermal comfort and construction practices. So we have that also in place, which at times is a big standard or code that India sort of practices. Further, we also have voluntary so along with RECBC and the NBC, we also have certain voluntary systems which are picking up at a very fast pace is voluntary systems like the green building certification and rating systems. So today we have various organizations or rating systems which particularly address the affordable housing sector, right? We have the IGBC affordable housing certification, we have Griha, which specifically again talks about affordable housing, and rating system which is tailor made for or customized for the affordable housing sector. We have Edge as a certification system also, where you see a lot of developers or the housing industry or the residential sector actually adopting these practices, right? So what these rating systems, though all of them or of them are voluntary in nature, what it actually does to the sector or the industry is that it helps in reducing your operational costs, along with incentives that are offered in certain states and cities in terms of additional FSI, your FAR, and also certain rebates or premium incentives that you get. So this particular market of rating systems and certification has also added to the relevance of this entire topic of discussion that we have here today. And then now soon also, we are also now talking about the energy conservation sustainable building codes, which are again soon sort of will definitely come. In the market, there is a lot of work that has been done at the back end to launch these codes. So this also will see a big jump in this particular relevance to this entire national priority that we have. What also happens in this particular sector that we are dealing with, which is the construction industry as a whole, is that we have to deal with multiple stakeholders, right? Multiple stakeholders ranging right from the occupant who is actually occupying these particular or using these particular spaces, for example, the homes that we are building for, to manufacturers, to architects, to other green building professionals, to government bodies, right till ULBs, which actually certify or actually look at how these schemes are built, right? So the involvement of these multiple stakeholders and actually working holistically is again one of the challenges, where again there is a lot that needs to be done with respect to how do we actually look at this entire gamut of stakeholders that we have, and how do we listen to each one of them and bring all of them on one page, right? So this again, like I said, is currently proving to be a lot of a big challenge for the industry. So stakeholders is again something that relatively sort of needs to be addressed more efficiently. Now coming to a little with this background, I will sort of now move towards where we are talking about, the built environment or thermal comfort, which is the topic for today's discussion. Is that today we are not only talking about buildings being relevant or just thermally comfortable, we are also now talking about moving towards net zero, right? We are talking about how we can actually move towards the entire built environment being net zero in terms of energy, in terms of water, in terms of waste, and also now further, how do we actually move towards a net zero carbon built environment, right? So again, a major aspect when we are moving towards net zero built environment is passive design, along with active measures like your air conditioning systems, your lighting, your appliances, and then the last in the pyramid is obviously your renewable energy. But again, forming a very large part of moving towards an efficient built environment is obviously passive design, or the role of providing passive design strategies in your built environment is a major priority. So why are we talking about thermal comfort being so significant, right? We all know that more than 90% of the times that we spend, we are spending indoors, be it again your homes, be it your offices. We are all talking about spending majority of our times indoor. When we are further talking about the affordable housing sector, we again know that the kind of again the kind of cultural or sector that we are dealing with, we are talking about mostly a lot of people who are using the affordable houses that we are building, used by women primarily, throughout the day, right? So we are not talking about these homes being unoccupied during the day, but we feel that there is a urgent need to actually address thermal comfort, not just during the night times, but also for the entire duration of, say, 24 hours. Because we also know that thermal comfort not only enhances the ease of living, but also reduces, again, because it has a direct impact on the active systems or, the resources that we are using. I think thermal comfort holds a lot of significance when we are designing buildings. So again, I think the audience here might definitely know, but again, I'll just touch upon the aspect of what are we trying to achieve here when we are saying thermal comfort, right? Again, the objective of any building design is trying to keep people comfortable, right? Here we are talking about designing buildings for people to keep people comfortable. So it's more of an occupant centric design that we all are talking about. We are talking about an objective of energy efficient building design, not just to keep thermally and visually comfortable, but also buildings which consume the least of energy, right? So at the same time, we are talking about both these terms of trying to keep people thermally comfortable, as well as not putting a lot of emphasis or a lot of load on the energy consumption of the building. When we are talking about thermal comfort, we are talking about some of the aspects or majority of the aspects that we are dealing here with, or parameters or drivers that we are dealing here with, are obviously determined by building design, right? So we are talking about climate parameters like air temperature. We are talking about humidity. We are talking about ventilation. Apart from that, then we are again then talking about certain building services like materials. We are talking about how our wind movement in the building is. We are talking about the facades, or we are talking about the building envelope in terms of windows, in terms of shading device. So a lot of actually parameters contribute to how we can actually design thermally comfortable spaces. Apart from the psychological or the physiological parameters of thermal comfort, which are of course very personal in nature to the occupant that is occupying the building. So here we are talking about the clothing aspect of the human body. We are talking about the metabolic rate, but all these are factors which are very personal in nature. And again, I'll come to this point a little later, that how again even the personal parameters need to be accounted for when we are talking about scaling up to design for thermally comfortable buildings. Yes, so the ultimate aim of providing buildings which are thermally comfortable is to try to actually have certain cooling or heating mechanism in place with respect to how your body sort of activates, right? All of us know that our body temperatures is maintained in a range of, say, about 37 to 37.5 degrees Celsius is what the body is comfortable at. And depending on the outdoor climate, whether it's adapting a cooling mechanism or heating mechanism, our body actually adapts to either losing heat or trying to gain heat and exchanging heat with the outdoor or the ambient environment. Similar is what happens with buildings, as all of us would know, that like humans, buildings also need to be maintained at a certain temperature. They need to be, they need to be provided with that thermally comfortable conditions to actually provide thermal comfort to the occupants who are occupying that building. So with the heat exchanges that are happening within the building, along with human body losing and gaining heat, there are multiple other components also that are leading to this heat gain. So I'll just skip this and move to I'll just move to this diagram where we are talking about how is this heat exchange actually happening, right? The heat exchange that is happening to provide thermal comfort inside is actually based on the three processes of conduction, convection, and radiation. So the kind of heat transfer that is happening primarily through conduction is what we know, all of us know, is primarily through the building envelope, right? That is a major source of heat conduction that is happening in our buildings. Convection is obviously the parameter of ventilation or air movement that we are talking in our building to actually take out the heat that has accumulated in the building. And then we are also primarily talking about radiative heat or radiation, which typically comes inside our buildings through transparent or transparent surfaces like windows and glass openings. So actually balancing all these three heat transfer mechanisms in our building is what is actually going to lead to a thermally comfortable building. So how do we do that? What needs to be done in order to maintain this balance is trying to just balance out with respect to passive and active means. So when we are talking about passive design, we are actually talking about designing for climate responsive design, trying to encourage natural heating or cooling or ventilation in our building, along with, of course, lighting. The second part, again, as designers or as architects, we are not really trying to move our focus away from active designs. But what we are trying to emphasize more is that how do we actually follow a step-by-step systematic methodology to actually move from passive design, leveraging on the climate responsive design alternatives that we have, and then move towards active. In active also, what we really need is to move towards the adoption of low cooling actual active means that are there, and not rely on just air conditioning that all of us typically know about today. So adopting of low energy cooling systems is something that should hold more relevance when we are talking about moving towards again a thermally comfortable space. So what we are really trying to achieve here is that passive design really needs more active users. So we really need to promote more of passive design strategies into our buildings when we are designing affordable housing. And we are also further trying to say that how active design needs to be more passive rather than the other way around, which we can typically see today. Again, we can see the levels. So there are various levels at which we as architects or we as designers or engineers can actually respond at various levels in the entire thermal comfort or the construction industry. Right now, what we are focusing today is more at a unit level. But like I said, there are many other levels at which, it starts right from, looking at what your entire topographical scenario in which you are actually constructing to moving to the climate zone level, where we are talking about designing buildings which are very specific to the region or to the climate that we are dealing with. Then we are also taking into consideration the site level interventions, or we are talking of dealing with how do we actually respond to take advantage of the favorable site conditions that we have. Further, then we move towards block levels. Today we are seeing a lot of housing stock that is not just single building housing stock, but we are moving towards larger development. We are seeing a lot of multi-story, multi-apartments, multi-building sort of schemes that are coming up. So how do we actually deal with how we are actually dealing with one building and its interface with the surrounding building? So looking at block level is also very, very important, because what we are doing in this is that because of the space constraints that we have in urban areas, what we are trying to really do is tighten up and crunch all our buildings in one tight site, thereby compromising on daylight, compromising on ventilation, and then indirectly leading to discomfort when we are inside the building. And then, of course, what we are dealing with is at a individual unit level or at a household level as to how we can actually adapt these thermal comfort, thermal strategies or passive strategies into our building for better thermal comfort. So again, with this, we all know that what we typically need to establish is, when we typically look at this the psychometric chart, or we look at the comfort zone that most of us are are aware about, that this is how typically every climate has its own trying to establish that comfort potential that we can see through the psychometric chart or through the thermal comfort band. What we really need to do is first move towards adapting passive means, and once we have that, have that extended comfort band that we can range with, then move towards low energy or more adequate active means that we can adopt into a building to further accommodate higher temperature differences that we see between the indoor and the outdoor. Again, I'm not going to talk a lot of details in with this, but when we are talking about passive strategies, we are talking right from the form and orientation of buildings, how that should be taken into account. We are talking about orientation. We are talking about how topography or use of topography to actually orient your building, as well as place your buildings in a particular climate zone, plays a very important role. We are then talking about very, very important aspect that is there when we are talking about not just glass or the building envelope, but we first have to prioritize sort of low hanging fruits that typically are, for example, shading devices. Shading devices typically are your low hanging fruits, which will give you a lot of benefit in terms of reducing your thermal comfort requirements. And then we are also talking about one more strategy where we are talking about cool roofs. We are talking about how do we actually reduce the heat that we are gaining through the roofs of our building. So cool roof again can be a passive strategy that can be adopted. Of course, this is not very relevant or is more relevant to the low rise building stock, where we are talking about the roof gaining the maximum heat, but apart from that, what cool roofs also does at a larger area is that it will actually help you reduce your urban heat island effect. Then we are, of course, like I mentioned, we are talking about fenestration also. How do we actually design our fenestration with respect to the orientation, the sizes, the type of glazing that we are using, as well as then the external and internal shading. Insulation, again, not majorly used in terms of when I say insulation, I'm not just talking about primarily in terms of building materials, where you're insulating the entire building envelope, but we are also talking about creating buffer spaces and those kind of design interventions that can actually help us achieve thermal comfort. Daylight ventilation, I think I've spoken about this. I will move ahead. And then, of course, at a site level, we are also talking about providing uh, more of low hanging fruits again in terms of trying to create a microclimate around on your site with respect to vegetation and landscape features that we have. So the adaptation of these passive strategies, what will this actually lead to? It's going to definitely lead to a lot of mainstreaming of passive strategies in buildings for thermal comfort. And what that can actually do is, we all know that it's going to significantly reduce our cooling demand. It's going to, provide us good ventilation and lighting in our buildings. It's also going to lead to sort of lesser dependency on mechanical cooling and heating of active through active means, and also indirectly lead to a decrease in the GHG emissions that we have. Uh, Also, the adoption of these passive strategies in the affordable housing sector or the residential sector is also going to lead to a lot of greater awareness, across all sections of the society. Today, we are talking about, the strata of the society that we are talking today about is the affordable housing sector. Creating awareness amongst them by the use of these passive design strategies is going to definitely go a long, long way. And lastly, it's also going to have so sensitivity in the building practices will obviously tend to decrease the disparity again that we see with respect to thermal comfort across the strata of the society or different economic classes. Just to talk about a little about how building codes today that are there are actually also dealing or talking already about these issues, but the challenge here again remains that how actually looking back or falling back on these codes and compliances to design our buildings. A very relevant code that we need to look at is obviously, like I have already mentioned, the National Building Code. The Eco-Niwas Samhita again has its own challenges. There is a lot of research that is being done to actually try to understand what are the challenges that we are facing with the Eco-Niwas Samhita. We also have the ISSP 41, which is the Handbook on Functional Requirements of Buildings, where we already have indices, to actually look at how thermal comfort is sort of measured. Effectively, there are two indices that the SP41 talks about. One of them is effective temperature, and the other is tropical summer index. So again, I'm not going to get into details of what each one of them means, but just again sort of telling you a little about. So these are scales or indices which are not really very commonly used when we are talking about designing for passive buildings or with respect to thermally comfortable buildings. So tropical summer index as an indice typically is very relevant because it takes into consideration the designing. It takes into consideration the living habits of the occupants. It's talking about clothing patterns. So all of this together is what sort of looks at this particular index. So it's very, very relevant that we as designers actually are looking at using these indices to actually design buildings which are more comfortable. So what the TSI actually talks about is trying to have a comfortable range of 25 degrees to 30 degrees, and looking at optimizing it at 27.5. Further, we also have something which is again very relevant as an indice today is obviously the IMAC model, which is the Indian model for adaptive comfort. So that again has been a game changer. But again, the adoption of this indice and actually designing buildings as per the IMAC model is something that is not seen in the market today. I'm not going to, I'll just move on. In terms of again the challenges with respect to, I think I just spoke about this, but design buildings which are actually using passive strategies for comfort performance of unconditioned naturally ventilated buildings. So indices today for thermal comfort are not really used by while designing buildings. Extensive research needs to be carried out when we are talking about dwelling units characteristic, just to understand their characteristics, the building materials that are used, construction technologies, policies and codes, and how they're actually getting implemented, from across the globe. So I think there has been a lot of work definitely being done. It's not that it's absolutely not there, but I think it needs to be scaled up at a level where we actually have a lot of post-occupancy evaluation that is carried out extensively to actually identify gaps and actually come out with strategic design interventions. So I think post-occupancy evaluations of residential buildings is something that needs to be scaled up, needs to be carried out extensively, is again something that I foresee, and I hope that we can actually contribute more towards data collection from existing building stock. Further, after we spoke a little about passive strategies, now we'll just quickly little move towards the active strategies and how we should also, along with passive strategies, adopt low energy active strategies. And then I will, end with showing you two works that, I have been a part of in terms of case studies before we end. So again, one of the newer areas when we are talking about thermal comfort, it's not in isolation, right? When we are talking about thermal comfort, at the same time we are also talking about energy demand, which is definitely a very, very major aspect when we are talking about thermal comfort, especially in tropical country like ours, majority being warm and humid and hot and dry. So again, we know that the use of air conditioning and electric fans is, about it's again on a rise, right? And the use of air conditioning is again set to be, going to rise. So you can see that about 11% per annum is what it is projected to rise, and further there are studies to actually show that this use of air conditioning is actually going to even go up to 20-25% in the coming years. So what this really means again for we as designers is that how do we actually stop this catastrophe that we are moving towards? How do we actually have the mainstreaming of low energy cooling systems into our buildings, and how do we actually mainstream these other active means that are there in the market and scale them up again for its mainstreaming. So again, the challenge here, like I mentioned, is that a significant portion of this demand is projected to come from increased appliance ownership. When I say appliances, it also means, the need for, air conditioning, fans. Of course, fans is something which is typically again towards the low energy cooling side, but we are primarily talking about, the ownership of air conditioning. At the same time, it is also anticipated that this is something that will happen because with the per capita, growing income of households, and with, aspirations of a better quality of life, this is typically related, or a better quality of life and accessible to housing is something that is very directly related today by occupants with the need for a better life, a better thermal comfort indoors, and that is directly related with air conditioning. So that is again something that needs to change over time, and I feel that we as designers can definitely contribute that how we are actually changing this behavioral aspect of in a resource usage that is happening. However, despite this, we are also, seeing that, like I mentioned, that it is projected that air conditioning penetration over the next 20 years, it's going to rise quite a lot. But at the same time, there is still a large section of the society that will still not be able to afford air conditioning, right? So, That again is a very major chunk with the population that we have in our country. That is again a significant portion of the household that we need to tackle. But here what we are seeing is that even if they can't afford air conditioning, what we are actually seeing in these houses that they are not even provided with basic thermal comfortable spaces. So they're not even bare minimum to the level that they can actually use the indoors that they are actually living in. And this is also happening because of rising temperatures that we are seeing. Heat stresses in our cities is also leading to a lot of accumulation of higher temperatures indoor. Houses that are very poorly designed, not ventilated. So all this together is actually leading to indoors which are very, very uncomfortable. And it's having a direct impact on the occupants' productivity and health as well. So thus building climate resilient and thermally comfortable housing for, again, this section of the society, which where we are talking about EWS or the LIG households, will not only reduce the energy consumption, but will also contribute positively towards the entire overall quality of their life and their productivity. So and also one sector that I have not touched upon, but I will talk about it very briefly in the case study that I will show, is that there is also a lot of housing stock that is happening with respect to. So we all of us know that when we are talking about the construction industry, growing multifold, along with that, what also is increasing is the demand for migrant workers housing, because we all know that in order for us to actually have these construction buildings that are getting there, we at the same time are also looking at workers or construction workers, and they also tend to stay in these temporary inefficient housing that we are talking about. So again, that is something that I will briefly talk in my case study. Then a little bit about, again, so all of us know that the drawbacks about using, again, there is a lot of research that has been done. Some of us also at the institute that I teach, we have also come up, we have done a lot of research about how and what is really happening with the ENS, and how it is really a tool or a mechanism which typically focuses on just improving the thermal performance of building envelope, particularly talking about walls, roofs, and windows. Again, I won't get into the details, but the one of the drawbacks that we have seen when we sort of use this as a tool is that most of our certification systems that we are talking about primarily use this as a code that we need to follow. But there is no thought given to the fact that a lot of our construction that is happening today is happening in monolithic construction, for example. So one of the primarily, I think I have, yeah. So again, there was the study done where we can see that apart from AAC blocks, conventional bricks, and fly ash bricks, one of the major construction materials that are used today in the housing sector is also monolithic or My1 technology, as they call. Now, if you start looking at My1 technology, especially at least from the part that where I come from Pune, we see a lot of housing schemes that are coming up in My1 technology or in monolithic construction. The advantages, of course, I'm sure all of you know, is the faster or speedy construction. It's more so faster pace of construction. So one of the advantages what we are actually losing out on is trying to look at the thermal comfort aspect of it. With this kind of fallback mechanism, that when we try to look at achieving the targets that have been set by the ENS of trying to achieve a certain RETV value for the building envelope, at times at times we are not able to achieve this when we are using construction technologies like monolithic, right? So how do we address this? How do we actually create the awareness amongst developers and builders that this is not something that you need to sort of look into? You need to change your or move towards other better housing building materials. So this sort of awareness again is something that has not been done very extensively. What this also leads to is, apart from, so one is looking at the ENS with respect to the use of building materials and not trying to meet those benchmarks which have been set. Secondly, what is also happening with respect to the building materials sector is that we are actually seeing a lot of buildings, not being responding to passive strategies or building design, right? So since we are focusing with the ENS so much on the type of building materials that we are using, because it actually talks about the U values of materials, it talks about the thermal conductivity of the material. In terms, we are actually losing out on the aspect of thermal mass of buildings, right? Primarily, we know that every building or the thermal mass of a particular material or a particular wall section or a roof section also has a great impact on providing thermal comfort in buildings, which is absolutely not addressed through when we are talking about ENS as a system. So these are again challenges with the codes and compliances also that we have, and we really need to focus or look into or retrospect as to how we can actually better this up. Again, we have a lot of, I spoke about, affordable certification systems that are there, be it GRIHA, be it IGBC. All these certification systems really talk about is trying to, say that use passive strategies in your building. So we as architects, it becomes very, very relevant for us to actually adopt these passive design strategies into when we are actually designing buildings in this particular affordable housing sector. So just some snapshots to show you how these rating systems are also addressing this particular aspect. So in terms of, again, falling back on the same system of ENS, again, rating systems are also talking about achieving certain thresholds with respect to building envelope in terms of, envelope peak heat gain factor, and how for different climates, there are different thresholds that we need to meet. So this ultimately is something that we need to look more into detail, because there is a lot of again, the adoption of these rating systems is again seen very large, because the government with these schemes of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, for example, has made it again a mandate to sort of look at these rating systems as a compliance option as well. But what is really happening is that the material palette that we right now working with is not really something that is adequate, and we really need to have more research done on the kind of building materials we are using. Yes, I think we already spoke about the IMAC model. This has again being something that again has been quite it's something that has really revolutionized the entire thermal comfort outlook when we are designing buildings. So again, I'll not really talk much about this. So I think ultimately, again, this is a reference that I've got from a AEEE report itself, is that what we are really trying to achieve at the end of it is a balance of trying to look at both passive as well as active means, right? So the first prioritization should obviously be given to where we are talking about trying to be lean with better building design, trying to adopt to thermal comfort standards, trying to look at the relevant building energy codes that are there. Then try to be really mean when we are looking at standards and labelings of our energy consumptions, looking at intelligent buildings, intelligent facades, trying to look at how we are actually looking at demand response and systems which are ready for it. And then ultimately what we really need to go is try to be green when we are trying to move towards a net zero or a carbon net carbon sort of scenario. So I think with this, I will just give me a minute. I will share the case study. Just let me know when you can see the case study.
It's visible.
Okay. So just something that is very different for, because I'm sure I didn't want to sort of give you the same examples of case studies which are I think easily and readily available on the internet, where we are talking about how a lot of work has been done into affordable housing. But I wanted to give you a different perspective about, along with affordable housing, today we are also dealing with a lot of informal settlement or the existing building stock in this particular sector of informal settlement that we have, and how things also need to change in regards to that. So just a small case study or a live data driven investigation that we did for the informal settlements in Mumbai. So I'll just move directly to the area and what study we did. So this was a student, Divya, who actually looked at how we could actually, come out with solutions for the informal settlement in terms of so the study actually aimed at looking at indoor as well as outdoor thermal comfort and the of informal settlement in Mumbai. The objective was obviously to evaluate the selected settlement that she did for the parameters of thermal comfort. She actually studied and assessed the different building envelopes and how they could actually be retrofitted in the existing conditions that are there. Uh, she actually took site readings for air temperature as well as MRT for of course a small period of time, and she actually looked at what was the current situation in these houses that we have. Not getting into this. So, of course, she had to relate this with thermal comfort because that was a priority in terms of what she was trying to study. So, just to give you a background about what the housing stock looked like, the kind of typology of housing that she was dealing with was ranging right from pakka houses which were built in concrete and brick to semi pakka to also kacha houses which were just of tin and metal walls, right? So that was an entire range of housing that or informal settlement that she was dealing with. Like I said, actual on-site measurements with respect to air temperature, globe temperature, everything was taken into consideration along with surface temperatures also. She looked at surface temperatures for the outdoor thermal comfort that she was studying. Because why outdoor thermal comfort is that because we have seen that it was noticed that informal settlements typically have occupants spending a lot of time in these intermediate spaces or spaces that are between two houses. So a lot of time women's are actually spending a lot of time outdoors as well. So both indoor as well as outdoor comfort was something that was studied. Uh, like I said, the temperatures that were measured or recorded were actually put into the thermal comfort tool and actually checked for its relevance. Further, there was also a lot of simulation studies done to try to understand what were the different roof sections that would actually work. Again, why roof sections? Primarily because we again all know that in an informal settlement, the walls are typically common walls, houses which are next to each other, having common walls. So walls was really never a problem in terms of heat gain, but it was the roof that was causing a lot of discomfort with respect to its material properties. So yes, so Bhandup in Mumbai was the area that was selected. So this was obviously trying to study what we were dealing with in terms of the existing situations. And then yes, so these were two households that were taken. One was a semi-pakka house, which was G+1. The kind of roof that we were dealing with was a tin roof with corrugated roofing sheet, a very typical of these kind of informal settlements. So we could actually see, the kind of recordings that were come. So this is the interiors of the house, absolutely uh, just one window, which was actually filtering some light in. The side walls were obviously shared with neighboring houses. And these were the kind of temperatures that were actually recorded in these house, with the surface temperature meter that the readings were taken on. So you can actually see the roof at 46 degrees, ranging from 42 to 43. The walls also absolutely heated up. And this was sometime during the month of April and May when the readings were taken. So absolutely the summer peak times. And then, of course, there were a lot of recordings that were done, for, like I said, a week's time or a week's data was actually collated. So you can actually see that there is a rise in temperatures that is seen throughout the day. So these were data loggers that were actually placed into these house. And then, of course, this data collated. I'm just going to. So if you see, when we actually put in these values into the on the scale of the adaptive comfort, we can actually see that none of the times in the day we are actually comfortable in indoors into these spaces, right? So you can see all these dots, which are the points for which the readings were taken. They all are way beyond the thermal comfort scale. A similar study was also done for this was again a G plus. I mean, it was only a ground structure, very similar in nature. Again, this was studied for its properties, and again, the similar findings were also seen in this particular case. Then, since we had done the data monitoring only for 1 week of time, we actually simulated the entire model in Design Builder to actually try to see what was happening throughout the year. So again, you will also see that the base case again was not very comfortable to stay indoors throughout the year. You will again see that you will see that all these points for all 12 months were way above the adaptive comfort levels. So I'll be happy to share this if anybody is interested. I'm just moving on with this. So again, then what was done as a second stage, this was actually done in association with an organization called Fair Conditioning. Fair Conditioning actually, had this project where currently this is also actually being tested for all these solutions that you see here in front is actually being tested in a informal settlement in Pune for its actual testing is ongoing with temperatures being recorded. So one of the solutions that they thought of implementing was alufoil or bubble wrap as insulation on the roof. The second was a tetra pack roofing sheet that was reprocessed. Then one of the strategies or one of the solutions that they sort of thought of implementing was a rooftop urban garden, where they thought that the occupants of that house could actually grow their own vegetables on top, if that could be one of the solutions. Of course, each one of them, I'm not right now getting into the detail, but each one of them was actually retrospect was actually seen for its implementation, its maintenance, its viable in terms of the solution that was provided. One of the solutions was a water filled PET bottle, where PET bottles were actually laid down on the roof, as a strategy, and how they could actually lead to better conditions indoor. Then there was just a provision of dormer window, if that could actually lead to some sort of comfort conditions, insulation, and then some modular roofing panels. So each of these, these 7, 8 odd options that were there were all simulated to actually understand that how they are performing and which one performs better than the other. So, and what we then looked at was the operative temperature, because all of us know that it's not the air temperature that actually impacts the thermal comfort indoors, but it is the operative temperature that really matters. So operative temperature was something that was very closely seen. So this is what you see, that ultimately what sort of works as a good option is obviously the fiberglass insulation, but then again costing becomes a primary thing again of concern in these informal settlements. So each one of this was actually tested, and right now, like I said, this entire project is being tested in a slum or an informal settlement in Pune. Similar studies, and then we also conducted studies for outdoor comfort. So what I'm really trying to put across here, like I said, is that I just wanted to let you know that it is also important that we see that even these informal settlements which are here to stay actually also need to have thermal comfort, which is not seen as a priority. When they are obviously they are informal in nature, they have obviously sprawled up over the years, but how do we actually come up with retrofitting solutions to cater to thermal comfort for these occupants is also something that needs to be looked at. And I will share one more case study. Just again, give me a minute. Again, I hope you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah. This was also something that I had presented at recently at the Energize conference that happened a month back. Which was organized by AEEE. So again, I just wanted to highlight this again, like I mentioned. Apart from the informal settlement, another major area for housing that is often or definitely neglected is the migrant workers communities that actually are housed in these construction sites that we are talking about, right? So because we see that again, so there was some study that we have done in the last 1.5 2 years where we have looked at these key challenges of housing that is provided for these on-site construction workers housing. So obviously you can see the images which are there on the left hand side, which actually are something that is not a very good sight to see, but this is what the business as usual case is, right? You will typically see houses which are of tin roofs and tin whether the panels, they're just sort of made with these tin sheets and assembled on site, and there for the next 2 to 3 years or for the entire duration of the site. There is very little ventilation, lighting that actually comes through in these housing. So all of this was obviously studied and put across as key challenges that was seen. Uh, Again, a lot of surveys that were done with on-site construction workers, trying to understand, what their problems were, trying to understand what was their feedback on the current housing scenario that they are living in, and obviously, not something that, I mean, the results were obviously something that we expected, that the indoors were completely dark, the temperatures indoor in summers were absolutely unacceptable. They were not comfortable at all. So these were something that obviously we knew, but this came up as a exercise that we did, trying to understand the counter. I mean, trying to understand the problems that these workers were facing with respect to their housing. And then of course because this was also a part of at the same year, in the same year that we were talking about this, so we also happened to participate in the solar decathlon competition, where on-site construction workers housing was one of the areas or one of the themes for the competition. So we took that up as a challenge. Again, what we designed here was an entire unit which was easily transportable, could easily, I mean, it is affordable, it can be scaled up, it is modular in nature. So uh, yeah, we actually came up with a prototype that we designed, which you will see here again. So this prototype happened again after multiple material explorations that we did. Uh, Primarily, the materials that were explored was again in terms of right from PET bottles again. So we took some inspiration from the earlier work that I showed you. So PET bottles, if they could be embedded into wall sandwich panels, between MS rods, we tried that, and all these options that you see, you can see images down, was actually prototyped. It was actually made on a small scale, tested, and seen if they could actually be replicated and made into a full type blown up sort of prototype in a ratio of 1:1. So EPS panel, we tried tetra board again, we tried bubble wrap in sandwich, chicken mesh, which was their puff panel. So a lot of, like I said, options and iterations were done in terms of material explorations. And finally, what we currently proposed as a prototype was an MS section with where you obviously will see a sandwich panel. You will actually see that, and then the entire section was actually honeycomb board. So we actually used, if you see the second image here, down under, you will see that this entire honeycomb board, which is a paper board, absolutely was sandwiched between an entire frame. Then for the flooring, what we used was cement sheet. Again, we are not very happy currently with the flooring system, but we are trying to actually come up with an alternative there, because cement board typically is very, very heavy. But with the live load that we are talking about of people actually occupying these units, we could not find a better material to actually take into consideration with the load that was going to come on the floor. Because again, what we are talking about is 3 to 4 people actually sleeping on the ground in these units. So again, taking in the load was a priority here. So cement boards currently are used, and then for the roof, what is used is GI sheet with aluminium bubble wrap, which was used for the roof. Again, more better alternatives for this is also something that we are working on. So you'll actually see that this prototype here on the right that you see is a 1:1 8 by 8 feet model, that prototype that was actually constructed and built and still currently standing in our institute that we have. But what we did as part of this research is that actually build this prototype, assembled it, and assembled it on a actual construction site, and compared it with a conventional unit which was just opposite on this construction site for its recording with respect to temperature and humidity and U value also. So all these tests were done. You will also something again very interesting which I wanted to point out was the base. Again, if you see, there is no foundation for this unit. There is no joinery, no excavation that needs to be done to actually assemble this unit. They are just simple discarded paint cans which were actually filled with the cement and then nut bolted into that to fix in or to assemble the entire structure. So absolutely no foundation, no excavation needs to be done to actually assemble this unit. Yes, so like I said, again, this was tested for about 10 to 15 days on site. We have recordings of it. Also, one of the another interesting aspect that we looked at was ventilation, because from our earlier survey, it was found out that apart from daylight, ventilation also was and we all know for thermal comfort, it's not just the material, but it's also the convection that needs to happen for effective thermal comfort indoors. So we designed this concept of an eco cooler, which again needs a lot of more work to be done and enhanced, but how we can actually use the funnel effect to actually get in wind or ventilation into the structure. So you will actually see that this eco vent that we have placed is at a very low level in the unit. This is because again the same point that workers typically don't sleep on beds, they sleep on the ground. So the kind of comfort that is required is at that particular level. So that is why the eco cooler was placed at that particular level. Again, we have seen good results for this, and also feedbacks were taken from the workers who actually stayed in this particular unit for 10 days. Yes, so in this also, of course, there is a lot of still future research that needs to be done. But with the simulations that we have conducted for this particular unit also, the unmet hours or the discomfort hours are still very, very high in this particular prototype, which we still feel should be lowered to produce better comfortable hours. But yes, so there is a lot of work that is still ongoing with respect to this unit. But again, what I wanted to really emphasize is how we really need to even look at these particular sectors of informal settlement, on-site construction workers housing, how even they should really form an area of research in the coming years to follow, apart from the regular affordable housing sector that we are talking about. Yes, I think yes, so I'll just end. I mean, just something that I wanted to show. Yeah, so I mean, at the end of it, what we are really trying to get is a reality check that it's a humanitarian issue. It's not just an environmental issue, right? So here, when we are talking about it being an environmental issue of thermal comfort, we are also at more so talking about it being a humanitarian issue. It's about occupant comfort, how we can actually tackle this as a larger issue. And I think what we should really start focusing on is cooling people and not buildings. So if we start really thinking about how we can cool people and not buildings, we can actually design buildings for thermal comfort and not for air conditioning. So I think with this, I will end my presentation. I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Professor Damankar, for this insightful session. Now we are opening floor for the questions, and if you have any question, you can raise your hand. Yeah, Nina, you can go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, ma'am. It was a good presentation. I have two questions. One is regarding the Econivas Samhita, wherein you mentioned that it does not address the thermal mass. What I feel is when we calculate the U value, that itself takes into consideration the thickness of the material. So, I mean, how is it that it does not address the thermal mass? So, can you explain?
Yeah. Would you like to put in your second question also? Should I address this first? It's okay.
Please, please address this one.
So when we are talking about material properties in terms of U value of a material, we are actually talking about the conductivity of the material, right? The conductance property. But when we are talking about thermal mass, we are actually talking about the storage capacity of the material. So it's very, very different from the U value. Thermal capacity or thermal mass typically talks about the capacity of the material itself to store heat. It talks about trying to look at the time lag of the material, right? So all these properties are something that is not addressed through a U value. U value will only talk about rejecting or resisting the heat that needs to come inside, whereas here we are also talking in thermal mass about how much can that material actually store heat to maybe transfer it inside at a later period of time.
Okay. And another question was, as you said, that this model that you prepared, the living quarter for the construction workers, that does not have a foundation. So how do we address that in during the heavy wind or hailstorm times? So will it not blow away?
Yes, yes. So typically, yes, this is definitely a question that we also have in our mind. Like I said, there is a lot of research that still needs to be done in this area. But typically, yes, what we have right now thought was in an urban scenario where we are talking about this sort of being more applicable, not in places which have these sort of, is more prone to natural calamities. So definitely, I will not say that we have addressed this particular issue, but yes, we are also aware of the fact that this needs to be done. So currently, I have no answer for this.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, any further question from any participants?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, good
Yeah,
evening.
I had one question. So your presentation, like during your presentation, you were explaining about the TSI and the IMAC model being metrics used for assessing thermal comfort. And then I was interested to know when you explained the solar decathlon project for construction worker housing, you were talking about unmet hours as the indicator that you use to assess thermal comfort. So did you consider using anything else, as IMAC temperatures or TSI or any other thermal comfort metric to assess, as part of your assessment or analysis in the solar decathlon project?
Yeah.
Or
Yes,
was it only
definitely.
unmet hours?
Or was it? Sorry, I didn't get your
Was it
last part.
or was it only the unmet hours from design builder
No,
simulation?
no. We looked at the simulation. We looked at absolutely. So primarily through the simulation, what we looked at was obviously the unmet hours or the discomfort hours, which we were, like I said, not able to achieve. The second is when we did the simulation, what we also realized is that the kind of scenario we build in simulation models is very different from what we actually see when we actually had the unit assembled on site, because there were a lot of assumptions that we make typically, but of course it was tested for the IMAC model also, which again so there it fared very well. But what we actually realized is that when we did the CFD modeling, so we also had to do CFD modeling because to test the eco cooler that was there, that could not be done only in design builder for the for that part. So when we did the CFD analysis to actually see how the eco cooler was sort of behaving, again the kind of results we got were showing a temperature drop between the outside and the inside by about 2.5 to 3 degrees. This is substantial. But when we again had the same unit actually installed on site, we had other challenges, because first thing that we didn't have any wind movement control that was there when we actually put the unit on site. So at that point of time we didn't know the kind of wind that was there on site, which was not the case in a simulated model. Second was when we actually placed the actual unit on site, the the space that was given to us to actually assemble this particular unit on a construction site was, if you see, it was an open area where all the four sides of that unit was exposed, right? Typically, if you actually, and the base case that we compared this with was actually a same housing unit on the same site, which was, there actually existing. But that unit had shared walls, had a tree next to it, which was casting some shade on the tin roof. So so one of the reasons we also felt that we didn't really see a substantial change in the indoor and the outdoor temperature was also because of the site conditions in which we were dealing with. So definitely a lot more actual studies need to be conducted. This needs to be scaled up. This needs to be tested in different climate types. Yeah, but right now definitely unmet hours is something, or the discomfort hours is something which was not met and is a concern that we really need to address.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any further question? Okay, so if there is no further questions, so like I would like to wrap up this session. If you have any question, you can send it as dbusinesscharter@gmail.com, which is you can find in the chat box. And also, like if your organization is interested to join as a signatory under this decarbonization business charter project, you can send your interest in the same Gmail ID that is there in the chat box. And also another announcement is that this was the last webinar in the Decarb December webinar series. And with this, I would like to thank all of you once again for this session and wishing you Merry Christmas and very Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. And wishing you all a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.